Welcome, this is Maya Dynamics Level 1, Week 9. We are pretty much all good to go in the classroom. Let's go ahead and begin. So this week we're going to continue our conversation from last week about soft bodies. I'm going to show you a few more applications of the technique, okay, of the tool. Last week we basically spent the class deforming a plane, doing a C. I'm not 100% sure. Shobana, if you don't mind, can you tell me if I got to the point in the last class to show you the mirror with the spring deformation? I don't think I did that. Did I talk about the matrix and that example about the matrix at the end? Because I know I did it in the Spanish class, but I'm not sure if I had enough time to do it on this course, on your group. Did I show you how I was turning the? No, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so I'm gonna start with that actually because that is another application of last week. Because I know in Spanish I had time, but in English I couldn't. All right, cool. So let's leave this example for next. But let me just show you a variation of the technique that we did last week with the water. So if you excuse me 1 second, let me just try to locate the scene for you guys. Just bear with me 1 minute, please, and see if I have it somewhere around here. I'm going to pause the recording 1 second so it doesn't get too boring, and I'm going to locate the file that I wanted to talk about, and I'll be right back. So let me just pause this. All right, cool, I'm back. That didn't take too long. So basically what I have in this scene, all right, is the same plane deformation, okay, that we did together for the water surface. So disregard this part. Okay, let me just find this. Okay, so disregard this. Okay, disregard this environment, and basically what and discount don't think of this. But if you stick to that, this is what we did last week. It's a deforming plane. So it's a plane that has a soft body attached to it. Okay, nothing else. If you see on my window here, I have a spring that I can show you just by doing this. So a spring attached to these particles using the wireframe method. That exactly 100% what we had together last week. So I'm going to turn this into something else. So you remember in the movie The Matrix. Let me see if I can locate this for you quickly here. In The Matrix, there is a shot in the first one. Let me just see if I can locate that. At least a still frame of it. There is a scene when after Neo takes the pill, the red pill or whatever. They sit him on this chair. He starts to, go under the influence of that pill or whatever. And there is a mirror to his side of the chair, and then he looks at the mirror, kind of funny, and then he touches it, and he pulls the mirror with him. Let me just mute this. He pulls the mirror with him. Let's just skip this advertisement. Hopefully we can jump it through. He touches the mirror comes with his finger, and then he lets the mirror go, or the mirror kind of snaps out of his finger, and you can see his reflection still, but being deformed. So the mirror almost behaved like it was water. Okay. By all means, this is not Neo, this is not the Matrix what I'm doing, but this is the exact same technique that you could use to replicate something like this. So here's the clip. Just maybe I can make it a little bigger for you. So that's the mirror, okay, in question. He's going to touch it, he's going to pull it back. So you can see his reflection, whatever. The mirror fixes itself. That's a different story. I'm sure you think this is amazing. I'm just going to keep it here as a reference just to discuss it. So he goes in, touches the mirror. That's the part that I'm caring for. You can see how the ripples come through. And you can obviously tell there are ripples because his reflection is being distorted. Correct? So, pulls the mirror with him.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real?
Blah, blah, blah. Morpheus.
What if you were unable to
let's
wake
go,
from
and
that
you can
dream?
see the bubbling.
How would you know the difference between the dream
on the mirror itself, behaving like
and
the
the
water,
real?
pretty much. Right? So, to do this, obviously it's been how many years probably since the Matrix? 12 or so? Or more, who knows? So, back then it was pretty revolutionary. But at the end of the day, though, the way that those guys did it back then is no different than the way you will do it today. The soft-body system in Maya hasn't changed since I first used it. There's nothing new, nothing different about it. So the technique wouldn't make a, it wouldn't be any different. So what I have here, like I said, is just what we did last week. So you can even start from that point if you want it. I will remove, this turbulence field that I have here is not connected. Okay, I don't really need it. So that's the turbulence field that came to doing the waves from last week. So get rid of that. And all you end up with is a soft body that doesn't move because there's nothing collided with it. There's no forces, right? So the soft body is just standing there. So what I will do is create myself, for example, this cone, and this cone will represent Neo's finger. Okay? Just because I don't have time to do all that. But this finger does what he does. He touches the mirror, pulls back. Maybe he pulls to the side and to the other side. I don't know if I'm doing that in that animation, but basically he pulls back on this one. I could do whatever I wanted. I could take the animation, for example, here, and maybe even move it a little bit to the side. Let's say I'm only animating the Z-axis. I just want to show you. Let me just animate all three. Go to the next one, animate all three, and then from here we can probably go a little bit to this side. So give it a little bit of time and do it again, and a bit more time. Move it here, and at the end just bring it back to whatever, let's say 0, and animate it again. So basically the finger is pulling back, it's going to one side. Don't worry about the explosion of the soft body, that's normal. It's going there. So let me just play back, probably you will see it better. So moves back, okay, moves to the right. I guess I didn't do the left correctly, so let's try it again. I didn't keyframe it or something, I don't know. So this will move here, and on the next one we'll just, for the hell of it, move it back a little. There we go. So now we should have the animation correctly, and this is the way it will work in production anyway. They will take the live action plate. Okay, I don't know what the hell's going on with, I was keyframing the wrong thing. They will go ahead, and the rotoscoping guys, they will track the camera, and they will also do an animation, tracking, and they will end up with giving you a piece of geometry, a placeholder for the finger, All right, perfect. So, and that's what you will end up receiving, right? You're receiving a shot camera, and you're receiving a piece of geometry that will represent the area from his finger, and that's what we're gonna take it on. So we have the soft body for the C. Okay, in this case we're gonna start calling in the mirror, and what I need to do in this case is I'm gonna create a spring, okay, between the tip of the finger and some of the section of the soft body that I need to deform. So for example, in this case, let's look at it from the top just to get an idea. Right, so that's the position where I am right now. Obviously, if you were to do this with more time, you will start exactly from here. I don't know, but I think I'm going to leave it where I am. I'm going to look at it from the front, and now I know the area of this mirror where this finger is going to be touching, right? So I'm going to grab, let's just go into wireframe and see if we can select the particles for the soft body. So here we go. So I don't really need to see the mirror itself. So I'm going to grab the finger and the particles, and I'm going to isolate their view. This is much easier. And I'm going to select then some particles that I think are going to be affected by this. So probably whatever is here. That's just the one particle, but I'm probably going to need more. So let's just grab some of these guys. So let's take a look. Okay, so I got this 5 particles. And now I'm going to grab the tip of the finger. I did a cone, okay, that probably is not the best representation. I should have done something else, but you get the idea, okay? So I'm just going to grab the vertices of the finger, okay, or the tip of the finger in this case. So with this selected, the particles and the CVs, I'm going to go and create a spring. And the method to create the spring is a little bit different. It's going to be, in this case, I want to create a spring that it has probably a connection to all. Okay, so all the particles connected to the CV. That's probably the most appropriate one. So once I'm happy with this, I hit create, and because I'm only isolating the view, you don't see it, but here we go. So we got this spring right here. Now, okay, already this is going to work. I don't know if the values of the spring itself are going to be enough, but this is good enough to start. So let's go ahead and play this back and see what's going on. So, okay, the finger pulls back, but the spring, okay, is too soft. So you can kind of see what's happening in here, okay? So you can see where this is going. But the problem, and this is deforming, which is good, okay? The problem here is that the spring is not strong enough. You're pulling it back and actually it's giving away. So I'm going to increase the stiffness, let's say to a value of 5. And let's see what that does. So you can see that the bigger the stiffness, right, the more it will deform, the closer it will get to the tip of this finger. So you can go in and try a few values. At the end of the day, okay, when you're doing this effect, you probably wouldn't care too much about this cone. I did say at the beginning, yes, that this is the representation of the finger. But if I were to do this effect, okay, I will just do whatever I have to do. Okay, even if they give me, for example, the roto guys, they give me, or the layout people, they give me a scene file with the hand, for example, and the finger is on this right position. I will have to do probably something like this, where a cone or something else is placed behind the finger further away, and you're going to have to match it as best as you can. Meaning that, if I have a finger here, it will be very tricky to have a soft body that will always be on top of it. You can probably, it's easier to be pulling from behind the finger with something else and play with the stiffness or how far back you're pushing this cone to keep the geometry of the finger touching or intersecting the geometry of the mirror itself. So it's something to keep in mind. No process, it could be very high resolution, where this is a lot cheaper to calculate. At the end of the day, okay, if you're not looking at this spring, okay, and you're just facing here, okay, this looks deformed, and it looks deformed like as the tip of a finger, okay. You will have more detail. There's a lot of stuff, as you know, that will need to happen. But in this case, you can kind of see that this is working. I'm going to increase a little bit more the stiffness of the spring to bring it a little bit closer. Remember, if you go too high, this is going to break eventually. So that's something to keep in mind. So here we go. Finger pulls back, and I'm happy with this. Okay, so let's say that that's matching my animation of the finger. I'm going to let it run a little bit more so you can see that when the finger moves to the right and to the left, the soft body works. And you can see ripples, okay, going through, because this was already set up as an ocean, as a water surface, kind of, I don't know, I keep calling it water surface. Yeah, let's say it that way. So it's capable of water rippling because we have already a spring connected to all the particles of the plane itself. What I'll do here, just to make things easier on you, is make these particles transparent for the water, for the mirror. Let's say the mirror. Okay, so now you focus just on this. Let's say that you're happy with this. Okay, you can see that the finger moves and the soft body follows. Okay, so let me just try to play from this view. Okay, so the mirror is deforming. Okay, you rotate to one side to the other and it follows. So perfect. That's basically what Neo is doing on his shot. How do I let go? Because if you keep playing this thing, I don't know if actually I did do it with you. If you play it back,
For sure was real.
you will let go.
What if you were unable to wake from
And you
that
get
dream?
that bouncing effect.
How would you know the difference
distorted
between the
reflection? So let's do the whole thing. So how do I let go? Because this spring is not breaking, right? How do I break it correctly? Not by making it fail, but just how do I tell the system, you know what, cut it with like a pair of scissors? It's quite simple. You will go into the stiffness value of the spring itself and keyframe it. So I'm gonna keyframe it. Let's play this back one last time. So just to get my timing right. So the spring needs to be connected all this time. It's gonna turn to one side, to the other side, and then, for example, somewhere there I'm gonna let it go. So I'm gonna keyframe it. Okay, key selected on the stiffness. In the next frame, I'm gonna make the stiffness 0. If you do this, it's the same exact effect as if you were to cut the spring or release it. So at this point, it's released, and the spring just lets go, and you get your rippling effect. From this point forward, you as an effects technical director, you will be cashing out this geometry into a whatever format and giving this to the lighters. But if you want to do it at home, then I'm going to make something really basic. Okay, I'm just going to create anything to reflect. I'm going to make, just to you so you can see that this works. I'll make myself, let's say, a helix, and this is going to be Neo. All right, so place it back here. Right, so this is my object. I need to put a shader on this piece of geometry that will be reflective. So I'm gonna look at it from like an angle, let's say from this angle right here. I'm going to open my render window. You need to render this with mental rate to get something that works better. Okay, let's render it once. You will know you wouldn't get anything special here. You just get black. You get black, but not because there's nothing in it. You can see the alpha channel has information, so it's because there's no lights. Again, this is not a lighting course, but I will help you out a little with this. I move a little bit faster through this because it's not part of the course. So indirect lighting, I'm gonna make myself an image-based lighting, okay, just to have something, an IBL, okay. You can use an HDR image, which I will find myself. Hopefully I have one here. So I have this one. Just by doing this, I'm already gonna get something. So let's see render. Okay, so I can see the sky behind is a very, very bright scene, but I can fix it. So at least I can get something. Now I'm going to make my environment not renderable. So under the render stats, I don't want to see it. Let's see where we're standing. Perfect. Okay, so we get this situation. We need to fix the shader for the mirror. So let's go ahead and put a shader. And it's very simple. You just make yourself, you can get very fancy, but you can make just the blend shader. Assign this to the selection, okay, and then make it reflective. So you go to the blend, you go to the reflectivity, make this thing 1. That means that it's just a mirror. So let's see how we go. Okay, so this mirror is reflecting the sky picture that I have behind me. It's not a really render as glass because it's solid, you know. You will have to play with the transparency or whatever, but at least as far as a reflection goes, it works. And just to make it pretty, we can go in and activate, for example, well, you can just do a preset, just make preset, let's say a preview final gather if you want to. This will look nice. My point with this, you can see that the object is being reflected and its reflection is distorted. So how do you do it? How do you do it in film? It will be a different story. You probably wouldn't be, you have to reflect a live action plate or something else. But as far as achieving this effect where, for example, I'm going to save this image, okay, once it's being distorted, once the mirror lets go, I'm going to render the first frame so you can see it without as a perfect mirror. Okay, so you can see I'm reflecting perfectly the cone, but let's say the shape I'm using for the finger, which I don't have to, but here it is. The helix is being reflected. Once the deformation is happening, you get a distorted reflection. So this is perfectly usable. What I'll do is I'm gonna render one more when the finger is still connected to the mirror itself. So let's pull back a little bit. Hold it, for example, there. And render that one too, so you can see the three different steps. Okay, so here's the mirror distorting. You can see the reflection of the object. Okay, this is once is no thing, and then once you break the spring and the mirror starts to ripple. That's what you get. This doesn't have to be once you start reflecting something more interesting, then it will make a lot more sense. But you can see as a technique, okay, this works. So let me quickly check on you guys over here. So is everything clear about this part? If you guys can mute your microphones, so in case we're getting any noise in the recording, sometimes I get so if you can just hit mute on your mics, that'll be great. Let's see, Julius is typing something. For the most part, what is not what the least part? What's missing? Do you have any doubts? I don't want you guys to go, after the class is over with questions. It's the same thing we did last week, so you can rewatch that class if you didn't get that correctly. The water. Right, so you need to watch the previous class then to make this one for this one to make sense. But outside of that, to turning last week's into this week's is very simple. Just adding the extra spring and then cutting it. Outside of that, it's just the same. All right, cool. So I don't hear from Shabana or Rodrigo, so you guys are okay, I assume. I'll check on you in a minute. Let me keep moving forward. No, Rodrigo's typing something. Yeah. All right, cool. Great. So that's that. Okay. What I wanted to start today with is this example, which I'm going to delete certain things to start from the beginning. So this one, okay, is just the geometry of a chain. And I'm going to open, I have a few quick times here for you. So let me just minimize the ones that I'm ready for yet. This is very old. I must apologize in advance. We're talking about a 13-year-old render of mine, right? So the resolution was very, very small. Okay, it was obviously not. But this is a render. Let me just loop it. A render of the water surface like we did last week. I didn't use ray tracing, mental ray. Back then it was, that's all I had. I had a very, very crappy computer. But this is like from my first demo reel or something. So bear in mind with that. But at the end of the day, I just want to show you this because I found it on my archives, and it does work as a surface, right? It needs more detail. Now with the computer that I have now, of course, I can do a lot more resolution. But the technique that I did back then, this is the same as the one I showed you last week. So you can see that it kind of works. I also wanted to show you, this is what we're going to do, right? So let's look at this one. I could make it a little bigger, but it's going to look so bad, but let's try it. So again, this is also about the 13-year-old render, okay? So it could be done a lot faster now, a lot better. But you can kind of see, okay? So this just deforming this chains in a dynamic way. Okay, having this an object, for example, go through. This technique will apply even if you don't have a colliding object. Let's say that you have ambient motion on something. Usually, for example, on Tintin, on the movie Tintin, a lot of the beginning of the film happens inside a ship, okay, a sailing ship. And once you have a set that doesn't have any windows and you don't really see the ocean, you don't really, as a scene, you don't really know if you're on a boat or not, unless you start giving ambient motion to the elements in the set itself. So that one in particular had hanging bottles, curtains, and things like that, chains and whatever, ropes. Doesn't have to be a chain, okay? It could be a rope. It's the same thing. So if you want to just give them ambient motion as a sense of the whole area where this chains, for example, are attached is moving, then this technique is valid, right, to do it. Nowadays, of course, you could do things with Encloth and all that. Yes, that's fine, but you have to always pick the best technique for the budget and the amount of time that you have. So even better, this could be done with rigid bodies, for example, with every link of this chain will be simulated colliding with the other. Okay, there are a million ways, and you can get from very, very cheap to very, very expensive. So you have to know all of them in order to accommodate to the budget of your project. Even if you're freelancing, you don't want to waste your time, because your time is money, into doing something too complicated. If this will do the trick, right? So if you get something like that and you get an object poking through and that's it, then this is a much better way to deal with than to do any other technique. There are issues with this technique, of course. It's not perfect, but it's the cheapest of all and the fastest of all. But what are the issues here? Well, interpenetrations. If I play it back for you, you wouldn't see them. Very, very hard to see. Okay, this could loop, this could keep moving forward, and it will be very hard to see. But if I start stopping and scrubbing frame by frame, then you will see, of course, the problem, because the geometry of the chain is not simulated. Okay, I'm going to show you what's happening here. So because that's happening, the collision of the sphere with the chain itself, the actual geometry is not really happening. It's happening at a particle level, so it's not really precise. So that's what I'm saying. You have to pick your battles. If it's something really close up and it has to look good, you have to do a different technique. But anyway. So this is done with soft bodies. The way it works is I have this. This is not a rigging course. If you want to know about rigging, you can go and watch Igor's intro to Maya, and he does cover a little bit of that. But basically, what I have here is a chain of joints. Okay, just basically rigging this chain by hand, just creating joints in every link. Let's say I have an IK handle, just like you would do an arm or a leg or something like that. I have an IK handle, which is basically a curve, which is right here. And this curve is going to drive, if I'm going to, let's say, I just want to grab the vertices of this curve. Okay, so let's say that you do this, right? So if I grab the CV and move it, okay, it's just basically deforming the joints. So this is rigging, a rigging concept, nothing to do with dynamics. Okay. So again, if you want to learn more about how to do this kind of stuff, please watch Igor's courses. But once you get to this point, okay, you have an IK handle on a chain of joints, and this works for a tail, this works for an antenna, many things. Okay, whatever I'm doing right now. So once you get to this stage, then you can probably by now you know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take the curve, and I'm going to turn the curve into a soft body. This way you can see that not only NURBS and polygons can be soft bodies, but also curves. So I'm going to grab that, and the procedure is exactly the same. I'm going to go to create soft body, but in this case, I need to use the option of duplicate and make the original a soft body. Okay, I do want to keep a goal relationship between my particles and the curve. But if I make a duplicate and make the duplicate the soft body, then I lose the connection that I have from the IK handle. The IK handle is connected to curve 1, not to curve 2. So just be very careful with that. So you have to duplicate the original curve, yes, and make the original the soft body. The copy will become the goal for those particles. That's the trick. So I'm gonna hit create, and exactly the same thing happens with geometry. Particles show up under the curve, and you will get one particle on every vertex of this curve. It'll be a bit hard to see, but I do believe that you get to see the little green dot in there. So one on every CV of the curve. Now that I have this, I got my goal relationship just like with the with the C, okay, the example with C, or the example with the mirror. So I can go in and grab these particles and make, for example, a turbulence field. Let me tweak it as I usually tweak my fields. So not the frequency, sorry, I need to do the phase. I think I do this every week. By now you must know it by heart, this part. And we're gonna do 3 axes quickly. So check that, and then just offset. At least offset it, because if not, then you get the same pattern all 3, which is not good. Alright, so that should do the trick. Perfect. These particles will respond to this turbulence field. It's a bit subtle. Let me make this shaded. But you can kind of see that this chain is starting to move. Okay, because if there are particles, you can apply any other rule that you want. You can go, for example, the particles of this curve to another curve, to something else, to a different set of particles, whatever you want. If you do an ambient motion, okay, for example, this chain should be probably attached to something, unless it's a ghost chain or something. But I mean, if I go in and crank up my field, then this chain will eventually, that's something you need to keep in mind. Okay, remember that the curve, okay, the soft body curve, this one right here, is deforming the joints, and the joints deform the geometry. That's the way it is, right? The geometry is kin to those joints. If this curve becomes too big because of for example, the turbulence field is deforming it too much, you will eventually get no deformation anymore, because the curve is so big that it's not even touching the joints anymore. So there has to be some sort of relationship between that. So if I do something like this, okay, this curve is going to deform like crazy, but eventually you will get nothing on the joints themselves. In this case, I think it's being okay, because the goal weight of 0.3 is keeping them nearby. But if I were to grab my particles and I get rid of the goal weight that I have, Let's say that you put that 0. And you want to have this thing flying everywhere. Eventually it's going to stop deforming. So you get that, and eventually you get a static chain. The chain will move, but you can see what's happening to the curve. It's so big that if you look at the joints are right there, okay? And the curve went away already, so there's no way of deforming those joints anymore. So you have to keep that in mind. So this technique, again, is for certain cases. But if I go and use, well, let's say that I want to attach this curve to the top, right? And then just have it hang in the form at the bottom. Let's say that this is connected to something. Let's do that. It's kind of the same thing we did last week with the C. So we don't need joints to see them. And I will take the particles and isolate their view just to make it easy on me. And then I'm going to select the particles that I want to move, just like we did for the water last week. I'm going to grab all of those particles right there. Window, General Editors Component, that's what we did last week. I'm going to take the gold PP of these particles and put it to 0.3, which I believe that's what we're using. You can put it to even let's say 0.2, for example. Okay, so now you know that all these particles selected in yellow are 0.2. The one on the tip is 1. And then all you need to do is change your gold weight from whatever you have to a value of 1. And that way you get an attachment. Just bring this back. You get an attachment at the tip, and then you get your chain free to move at the bottom. It moves funky like this, of course, because the turbulence field is very strong. So, of course, you will adjust this. Something else that is missing, for example, is no gravity in the scene. So let's go in and put some gravity. There you go, some gravity in there. And the conserve of these particles, remember, it should never be 1 unless you're in outer space. So 0.98 should do the trick. So now we have gravity and we have a turbulence field that are fighting each other. It's a bit robotic. Okay, what's happening here? But again, you have to play with these values a little, lower your frequency, adjust these things a little. But this is one way, okay, to get this kind of ambient motion. I'm going to put my turbulence to 10. You can put a wind force, okay, any other field. So, and then probably increase your value for gravity. What is missing here that you guys, I don't know if you guys have written that on the chat window, but something that is missing in this scene is a spring. Right now these particles have the same problem. Okay, if I go in, put that back to 30, and I put my frequency back to 1, these particles have the same problem that the water surface had at the beginning of the previous class. They're not really aware of each other. That's why they kind of snap weird, you know, because the particles of the soft body are free to move in any way they like, so they're not really connected. They should be connected. So I'm going to grab my particles. I'm going to go to soft body, create springs. Never create a spring on a deformed object, because that's going to be considered the initial position. The rest of the actual length of the spring is going to be this one. So you should always rewind it and then make it. And I'm going to use the same method as with the water. Hit create. And here's my spring if you want to check it out on its own. So it's basically just connecting the particles. And now, after we hide it, then we play it back, and you will see that it's a smoother deformation. You will have to increase the stiffness, of course, a little, the damp of it. But now at least these particles are a bit aware of themselves. So I'm going to increase my stiffness and my damp. And there you have it. Okay, so it's working a little bit better. It's a bit obviously more confusing because you're seeing the curve, but if you don't see the curve and make the particles transparent, you only have a chain, then it will work a bit better, okay? Turbulence fields, of course, for ambient motion are not really correct, okay? You will have to use a wind field or something else. I'm just doing this so you can see quickly how it deforms the whole chain. And because it's done with joints, okay, you're deforming this with joints, it means that this chain will never stretch, which is correct. Right? You don't want these pieces of metal to stretch. They're unable to do so because the joints would never do that. The joints would never be longer. The chain itself is not going to be longer than this. The curve can get longer, yes, but the joints will never be, unless you scale them. So this is a good way to guarantee that these chains will never, will never be longer than it should. Then to do what I have on my example, okay, you basically will save the scene. Once you're happy with this setup, you will save it into a scene called dynamic chain, for example, and then import it as many times as you need, or reference it or whatever you want to use to have multiple instances of it. And the collision between the chain and the sphere that it was bouncing on this clip, okay, that collision is simply by doing a collision between the sphere and the particles of the soft body. That's why, hence the lack of precision, let's say, or interpenetration that you get here is epic, and you can see it going through big time. So again, pick your battles with this technique. But it will be just simply selecting the particles of the soft body, shift selecting the sphere, and then making it make collide. Simple as that. Quick checkup on you guys. So this part clear? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Any questions? Come on, guys, I need an answer. Just yes or no, please. There you go, clear. Thank you. All right. Perfect, so let's keep moving then. So that's another application. I'm going to show you, I don't know if I opened that. Let me see. I want to show you all the other things you can do with soft bodies, just on a render level, so we don't go and recreate something simple. But let's say something like this. I was saying, I don't know if you remember last week, I was saying that think of soft bodies also as modeling tools sometimes. Let's say that you need to do a tablecloth on this table, but the tablecloth itself doesn't have to be dynamic. You just need to model something quickly that it will have the draping and the pleat that you will get probably from a piece of cloth hanging of this table. You could easily, okay, use soft bodies for it. I would. I'm not a very bad modeler, so I'm going to drop myself the same, for example, the same ocean scene even that we did last week. The same mirror kind of thing. If you plug a gravity field and then grab those particles of this soft body, make them collide with this table, let it drape. Okay. Once you're happy with this, then duplicate this geometry, and then you're done. That's probably an effects guy's view of modeling, right? I will probably do this instead of trying to deform this geometry in another way. It's kind of hard to see because it's a very old render, very crappy, but you get the all the undulations that you will get. This cloth, because it's not stretching too much, it will fold in a physical way, in a correct way. So this is something you can quickly. Probably it's faster to do that than to model it by hand. I don't know, especially if someone like me, I'm terrible at that modeling. So here you go. Okay, so that's another application. We already saw this one. You could also for example, do something like this. This was a very, very low budget film. Actually, the first paid project probably that I ever did. Very long time ago. The task on this part was to do something. Okay, I'm doing air quotes here at home. Something that it will kind of represent some sort of liquid inside these pumps. We're talking about super low budget film. Okay, I mean, so bad that I almost didn't even get paid for months. It was terrible. Okay. That aside, I needed to find a cheap way to solve that situation and give some sort of impression that there was something happening here. So if you play it back, okay, these pumps have animation. You can see that the liquid inside, okay, or whatever, the gel, whatever is inside, supposed to be gasoline. It has some sort of movement. This is a direct-to-video for kids kind of thing, so you know the quality. But that aside, you can kind of see that there's some sort of, movement in there. There's no real flow, there was no end cloud, none of that, okay? Nothing. This is basically a soft body. So basically what's happening in this scene, I don't have the original scene, but what's happening on this scene is I had a cylinder, okay, that it was skinned to the main joint of this character. So whenever he was bending to the right and to the left and all, that cylinder was deforming with him. So it was just part of his geometry, let's say part of the rig. A big cylinder in here. Then I took that cylinder, okay, and I made it a soft body using the duplicate as a soft body, using the original as a goal. And then I took all the particles, pretty much all of them, but the ones at the very tip of the very surface, the very top of it, and I gave them a gold weight of 1. That way, even though it's a soft body, those particles are following, okay, its motion. And then I left just the top layer as a soft body, and I applied the same rules pretty much that I applied to the surface that we did last week. So those guys are free to move, and they're being driven by the deforming cylinder. So this is an extremely cheap way, okay, to get something like this working. Okay, again, like I always cover my back with this. It will be for the haters out there. I'm not saying that this is the way. Of course, there are many other ways, but this is a solution that I found, especially when you have to do 40, 50 shots. So what happens in this case, if you have to do so many and it's just you, like it was in that case, it was just me doing this, doing the whole effects for the whole thing. Basically, you will do this and on the rig level. So the same file that the rigger is working on and he finishes, you will put your dynamics in there. So when they reference this file into multiple scenes and do the animation, you pretty much don't have to do anything. This is something like, and that's the way I set it up, and that's the reason I did it this way. That way the animators can do their work, and all I had to do is just cache the particles, and actually I could tell them to cache the particles when they were done with their animation. So because it's done on the master rig, it gets propagated into every scene where those pumps are visible. The animation is driving the object that the particles are gold to, so I don't have to worry about that either. And if I set my dynamic correctly, and I know that these pumps are not going to jump around or bend completely upside down, if they're going to be doing this kind of thing where they're just talking to each other and moving left and right and all, I don't even have to redo the dynamics on a scene per scene basis. I can just set it once and let the animators cache it for me. That goes directly to lighting and out of my hands. So using soft bodies, you can see there's a lot of things you can do. So another technique, another application, of the technique. For example, a bridge, okay? The movement is dynamic. You can see the rippling, okay, is going through because all of this is dynamic. So let me just wait for the camera to rotate. This is just a quick test that I was doing back in the day when I was learning these things. But basically, the way this works is the ropes, they go along all this, are cylinders. They are soft bodies. They have enough detail to deform. The undulation that you get is actually done by dynamics. Okay, so it's done by the gravity field pulling these guys down. So there is a cylinder with a spring going on this rope, one on that rope, and also at the bottom. And that is it. The rest is these planks are nothing. They're just attached to the actual rope. So the rope themselves are moving these things. Okay, so these guys are attached to the rope. And this horizontal beams, okay, like the columns, are parented to the planks. So honestly, all that is doing the motion of this bridge itself is the ropes, like the way it should be. So there's no deformation on the plank, no deformation on the columns. So that's why you get this kind of result. Let me just play one more time. So this will respond to animation. This is another one of those things that you will rig probably once. Okay, if you rig it correctly, the animators can come in and make a bouncing ball jump from one plank to the other, and this bridge will respond to it. Or they can have someone lean on a rope on one side and it will correctly work because it's set up in a semi-physical way. Let's say you get these ropes are attached to the ground. So this is basically it. One thing that I remember that I had to do in this example is probably take the vertices of the soft body, the particles of the soft body that are attaching or connecting themselves to. Let's see if I can find a better angle. Something a bit closer. There you go. Beautiful. So I have particles all on the whole cylinder. The particles that are adjacent to these metal pieces, okay? What I did to help, okay, just I gotta say that for sure, is that I made the gold weight. I gold them to these pieces of geometry. A little bit. No, not golden, but I could have even made springs if I wanted. Basically, it's just to reinforce the collisions that are happening in here. So basically the way it works is the hard cylinder of the rope. Let's say when you duplicate the cylinder and you make it a soft body, the non-soft object, of course, is a goal. That non-soft object, those vertices are clustered to these rings in here. So that way the soft body will follow this section. It's cheaper to do that than to guarantee collisions inside those loops. Because this is very hard to calculate for the system. When you have a little ring and a soft body passing through and you want it always to stay inside, it's cheaper just to fake it. So if you take the hard rope and then you cluster those vertices to the rings, then the soft body won't have to think about collisions in this section. It will just follow completely. But aside of that, that's all is there. Let me check if that was clear. Yeah, is that making sense? The bridge part, because I kind of got stuck there on the explanation. Any questions about those two applications? There are 100 million applications. It's a bit confusing. What's confusing you? What part you don't get? Let me see if I can open the scene file. It's not was part of my plan today, but why not? Let's see what question you have, Julius. And what about you, Shobana and Rodrigo? Is this examples for the bridge? Is it clear? I mean, it's just what I mean, and also for the gas pumps, you know. Do they make sense? All right, Julius. I'll rephrase that a little better. Keep typing, Shobana and Rodrigo. So, in the meantime, I'm gonna see if I can open. Let me see if I can find that scene. Yeah, it must be somewhere. Oh, actually, I think I put it here just in case. Yeah. So, there you go. All right. So let me just show you the spring. Show dynamics. Alright, so this is the scene. Let me just take a look and see what Shobana wrote. Rodrigo. Well, Shobana didn't write anything. It's a bit confusing. Alright, well, that's normal. So, there it is. Here's the scene. So, basically, soft body here. I can open this. Find it for you. Okay, so this is my cylinder, which is a soft body. You can see it has particles attached to them. Okay, if I go like this, actually, even if I don't show you the polygons, you can see it probably better. So this is just the dynamics of this scene. Okay, so basically, here is my cylinder, which is a soft body, cylinder that is a soft body. If you see, I don't know, let me see if I can find the ropes. So how can I do this? Show the polygons. Okay, so let me just see if I can just show you quickly what this looks like. Show selection. I think the whole thing is hidden, probably. Just bear with me 1 minute. Let's see if I can find the. Okay, so this is the left top rope, and this one is the left top rope. Why can't I see it? One second. I wasn't planning on opening this scene, so it's kind of hard to figure it out what's happening here. So here are the springs. So these are my 4 ropes, which for some reason I cannot visualize. There's no layer. That's weird. Well, I think we're gonna have to look at the dynamics of this. Those are just the hard ropes, basically what I'm trying to look at, but somehow I can't see them. So let's just look at the dynamics in here. So soft body here. Okay, each one of these is a different soft body. You can see one spring. Okay, that is being shared amongst all of them. This is nothing. Okay, so there's no soft bodies in here. What I was trying to say about the ring is so somehow I cannot really see. Let me just hide this one. I cannot really see the hard ropes I don't know why they're not showing up. Could be their nerves. No, they're not nerves. So, just bear with me 1 second, man. This is a mess. It's weird, I cannot even go into shaded mode. This scene is probably 13 years old, so who knows, I might have 3 or something. I haven't opened it probably since. I should be able to see the geometry, but you can see the rings here. So what I'm basically doing is taking the cylinder that is not soft, okay, the curve, the original rope itself, which sadly I cannot really visualize here, but the rope that runs through originally before you do the simulation in here. And I'm taking the vertices, kind of like rigging it to it, right? I'm taking the vertices of that rope and using a cluster to place them inside this ring. So whenever this ring moves, that rope is going to deform with it, right? So in not of a dynamic way, it's just like rigging anything. So you take those CVs and then plug them. Once you turn into a soft body and you use goals with it, then if these CVs, okay, of that hard rope are following the ring, and the ring is moving up and down, the soft body will also follow, right? If you have a goal weight of 1 on those particles right here, those particles will move up and down. That way you avoid having to calculate a collision inside here, because this part is very tricky to calculate. Okay, if you have particles in here, you're going to need many particles to keep up with the movement of this ring. So if you take the hard object before you do that and you cluster it to each one of these rings, then you don't have to calculate collisions in here. So that was all I was trying to say. It's just make sure that, because that's a very complicated part, you probably should do that. Aside of that is that you let the rope behave as it should behave. You can see there's nothing special, just a soft body here, one spring for the entire rope that is holding the whole rope together, and that's it. So probably try yourselves. I don't know, like I said, I wasn't planning on opening this scene, otherwise I would have probably prepared this part a little better. If you still have questions, okay, this week, then I will open it during the week and see what's going on in here, because it's definitely, the scene is not acting. I cannot even go into shaded mode for some reason. So yeah, we'll do that if necessary, but let's see what Julius is writing down. Yeah, it's just to avoid it, because you can have a soft body completely. You can skip the whole thing I said about the golding of the particles. It's just to be able to get those particles to stay inside that ring is going to be very complicated. So you take the hard bridge and just take those CVs and have them move along with it. So to avoid having collisions. So that's pretty much it. All right, so we took a bit of a detour in here, but we have a few minutes still. So what I can do is, the last example I wanted to show you today was, let me just open it up. So I have the 4 stages of this, because I don't have time to do it all. Okay, we're gonna just talk it through. Well, basically I have this scene file here, and I want to do footprints based on the collision of the feet of this guy with that plane that you have at the bottom. So you already have this scene, okay? I already put it on the FTP. So for you guys in the live session, you already have the animation. I mean, you have this guy doing his kicking. So I think I did that a couple of weeks ago. Oh no, not a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago, towards the beginning of the course, when we did the dust coming off the feet. Okay, so you already have that. You can use the same scene for this. Those of you watching the recording, if you have donated to the content support, you have access to this. If not, then you probably need to replicate this somehow. So footprints. So I want to deform this plane based on the impact. Also using soft bodies. So basically, I'm going to grab this plane, and the trick here is the more detail you can put on your plane, the better, the more readable the footprint will be. So again, if this is something that's going to be super close up, okay, then you will have to put a lot of detail in here or use a different technique. If it's something that is mid-ground, you know, this kind of deformation could be okay. If it's something really far away, this is more than enough. Okay, resolution on the plane. The way it works, I have 3 levels already made, so of this scene file. Okay, so with 3 level, more detail and more detail after that. Well, basically, you will grab this and just turn it into a soft body like we've done before. So duplicate, doesn't matter if it's the original or the copy in this particular case, unless you have some sort of special UVs or something that you're doing on your plane. But in my case here, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to take the gold weight and set it to nothing. Okay, but I want to keep that relationship. You see, you could have said, well, if you don't want it, why do you use it here? Why do you turn it into gold? It's because I might need it later, so I'd rather have it, but with a gold weight of 0. Hit create, you know what happens. I'm going to also, right away, I'm going to take the particles and I'm going to make a spring. So using the wireframe method, just what we did with the water. So you could even grab the water scene again and reuse it for something like this. So here's my spring, and as it comes, I hide it. And then I'm going to make a collision between the particles. In this case, just for the sake of speed, I'm going to make it with a collision with the whole body, but you could also do what I did for the foot contact example a few weeks ago. Is just using the plant of the foot, the bottom of the foot. It could work the same way, but you know, just for the sake of speed, I'm going to select the particle, shift select the alien, and make a particle, make collide, and in this case, I'm going to leave everything at 0. Hit create, and I'm going to get something. Okay, so let's see what happens here. So there we go. We have these particles moving into infinity. Okay, I'm going to let it play. It's shooting out like that. This is normal. So you get this kind of stuff. Weird, okay? But it's definitely something that is reacting, okay? So yeah, great. But why is this happening? And this gives you ideas for other things you can do, right? Why this is happening is simple. Is because these particles have a conserved value of 1. And in this case, means that the particle, remember, gets hit, gets pushed by a force, in this case, the collision, and that particle is free to move until another force will stop it, or it will just move forever. In this case, yeah, it's deforming a lot, and then the spring itself is trying to bring it back, so it's a bit complicated. What you should do in this case is take the conserve to 0. And this means that this particle will only move if a force is directly applied to it. So this means is when the collision of the foot and the particle is occurring, in those frames the particle is is going to move. But as soon as the foot stops touching the particle will stop on its track completely. So that will help. That will definitely give you something. Okay, you can see that there's some sort of deformation happening. You can kind of see some footprints in here. So something, at least, I mean, when I say something, I mean that there's deformation occurring. So let me just make the particles. Well, I can just hide dynamics for now. Okay, so you can see that there is deformation based on his impact, but like I was saying, it's not very detailed, okay? And you get this problem here, this kind of things peeking through. So I'm going to show you how to solve that issue. But you can see that this is definitely working, okay? This guy seems like he's walking on sand or something, okay? He's leaving prints as he moves around. So to save the time, because I'm almost done with time for today, I'm going to open the next level. So this one right here, this one has a lot more resolution. Basically, it's the same thing. I get my plane with particles. This one doesn't have the spring, but it shows what happens when you have more resolution. So let me just turn off the dynamics, hide them, and let the guy run. It's a different walk cycle, but you can see that this, definitely the geometry is reacting to the impact of the foot. We still have the issue of this, which we'll fix in a minute. But this is definitely evaluating. Okay, so things are working. The next step is making, and open the next scene, is the same thing, but it has an extra character and it has a spring connected to it. Okay, so it's the same piece of geometry. You can see that it has a lot of detail, okay, to get really readable prints. The same guy running, and I also added this guy walking just to show you that it can take multiple objects moving through. Because what's dynamic is the floor, not the character. So you can have multiple things. You can have as many objects as you want colliding with this, and they will all cause dents. And I'm calling them dents, you see, because it doesn't have to be only footprints. This could be a piece of metal that gets hit by something. Let's say you have a piece of a barrel and you hit it with a baseball bat, and you want to keep the form in it. That's exactly the same technique. Doesn't have to be a flat plane. Okay, it will work no matter what. So in this one, like I said, it has a spring. Okay, so now, and it also, I don't know if you can see it here. Keep an eye on my timeline. Okay, the way it's evaluating. When I hit play again, you will probably see, you will see something that you can tell that it's not going straight from one frame to the next. It's actually doing in between frames. It's doing 4 evaluations per frame. It's going, for example, frame 20 to 20.25, 20.5, 75, and then 21. So that's happening, you see, 4 times in every frame. This is called oversampling. Okay, oversampling, you have to, means that this kind of stuff. So you're going to evaluate more times per frame, and that's going to basically translate into precision. So you can see now the peaks that we're getting before are not happening anymore, and that was happening just because the foot, okay, was for example above the ground on frame 1, let's say, and then below the ground on frame 2, and then above the ground again on frame 3, for example. It could be depending on the way the animation was done. So the Maya doesn't have enough time to calculate the collision and deform it correctly. So when the foot happens to go from on the ground to above the ground in one frame, Maya will do whatever it can, and that's where those peaks were coming through. But if you start evaluating more often, okay, not just once a frame, then the precision is a lot better, right? So you can kind of track the movement of the foot much nicer and deform it better. So in between having a lot of detail, as you can see here, having a spring, and evaluating more times, which by the way you can do by going into solvers, you're going to do to edit oversampling. And the oversampling you can see here, by default, if you've never done this before, is going to be set to 1. It's just basically what happens on every scene that I've done so far. 1 frame evaluation after every frame. If you set it to 4, means that 4 times for every frame you're going to be evaluating. So you have to change it here, okay, to 4, and you also should go into your animation playback speed. Used to be, this is a very old school way. I think they fixed it. Back in the time, you know, back before, you had to go in and divide this by 4, the playback by frame. In this case, it's working fine. I have it at 1, so try it out. But you will definitely see it on your timeline. You will see the evaluation being on a subframe basis. If you don't see that, then go back in here, okay, and change your playback. In this case, you could do 0.25. And Maya will say, well, you know, I'm going to round it to 2.52 because that's what I should do to be able to round it correctly. So that's fine. So that way it matches 4 evaluations on the dynamic solver, and then you're going to split your evaluations in time by 4. Okay, but again, like on my scene, doesn't seem to matter. So 1 should be okay. So, but between those 2 things, and you get very, very readable prints. You can see here, it's perfect, right? So it's definitely a foot. So and you let this guy, and this dude here also, you know, you can. There's a little bit of problem here. It's because these are not animated by hand. These characters are motion captured guys. And so, you know, if we're to do this in a studio, the animation department is responsible for not giving you characters that interpenetrate the floor. So the animation should be correct. So if you have interpenetrations and you cannot fix them doing what I'm doing, then you're gonna have to give it back to the animation department, and they have to fix the cycle. You know, nothing I can do there. So, but I'm gonna let it run. You can see it plays back pretty quickly. You know, it's about 1 frame per second, which is not bad at all for this kind of deformation. And he does his thing. He runs. He leaves his mark, and it works perfectly fine. So he can do whatever he wants. He can tuck and roll because I'm doing the entire character. He can fall in head first, and that's fine. It's gonna deform it. But you can see that this works. This holds up quite nicely, right in here. So with that, I need to leave because I need to do my Q&A because it's time for my next class. So can you guys quickly tell me if you have any questions and I can address them before I go? You're all right. How about you, Shabana, and you, Rodrigo, please? If you give me nothing. Perfect. One last thing, okay, is the material. Let's say in this case, okay, he's putting his foot on the ground and he's leaving a print, and the print stays. Obviously, as you can see, that you have a print from the beginning, a print there, so it looks like he's running on like sand or mud or something, right? if you increase the value of the gold weight, okay, right now my gold weight of this is 0. So gold weight is 0. So that's what's happening. They just stay. If I increase that number to like 0.5, he's gonna feel like he's walking on something a bit more rubbery. So he's gonna leave a print, but that print's gonna disappear eventually. So you can see that he's gonna leave a print in there. And if you make that number high enough, it almost feels like he's walking on an elastic surface. Pretty much. I mean, he's gonna go and leave a print, and the print disappears right away. You can see the print goes and then just vanishes back. So keep that in mind, right? So the higher this number, the print will be red, but very quick. You know, it disappears quickly. You can kind of see that the print just goes away. If you play blast this scene, then you will get a feel like, oh, you know, it's almost like a rubber, like a trampoline or something, you know. So you know, something worth mentioning. That's why it's good to have the gold weight available, because you never know. You might have to switch it to something else. It doesn't have to be so abrupt like this. Okay, 0.5. You can do a 0.1, and even 0.1 will do a retraction of that print. So it looks like more watery mud, for example. So something a bit more like, you know, yeah, do the form, but eventually, you know, it kind of settles back in. So 0.1 will start erasing that print. If you keep an eye on the one, this first one here, by the time he's somewhere around here, probably that print is done, you know. So, you know, it gives you a more natural. So this surface is not dead. Like if you push it and that's it. It has a bit of movement after he's gone. So something to, you know, worth mentioning. So perfect. I think you guys are clear. So I'm gonna stop this sharing, and for the recorder guys watching this, thank you. See you next week.